My best friend, Melanie, lost her sight in a brutal car accident. Her boyfriend, Tyler, died in the fiery crash. When she woke up in the hospital and realized he was gone, she tried to end her life 3 times. After her 3rd failed attempt, her parents literally got down on their knees and begged me. "Chloe, please," Mrs. Miller sobbed, clutching my hand. "She's our only daughter. If she dies, we won't survive either. Your boyfriend, Ethan, is about the same height and build as Tyler. Please, just until she recovers, let him pretend to be Tyler. Let him be there for her." I looked at Melanie, pale and unconscious on the hospital bed. I bit my lip until it bled, and finally, I nodded. From that moment on, my boyfriend became my best friend's boyfriend. To make it easier to care for Melanie, we all lived together in the townhouse Ethan and I had co-signed. I basically became their live-in housekeeper, cooking and cleaning for them. 6 months passed. I came back early from a business trip, eager to surprise Ethan. But as I stood outside the front door, I froze. I could hear voices coming from inside. It was Mrs. Miller. "Melanie's eyes recovered 3 months ago. She's been binge-watching Netflix and shopping on Amazon every single day. If we keep this up, Chloe is going to find out." Mr. Miller let out a heavy sigh. If Melanie hadn't insisted on breaking up with Tyler, he wouldn't have killed himself. But thank God she didn't get dragged down with him. The blood in my veins turned to ice. Realizing that my boyfriend and I had been completely played, I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling as I prepared to call Ethan. But the next second, Ethan's voice echoed from inside the apartment. "Don't worry, Mr. and Mrs. Miller. I'll handle the rest. I'll figure out a way to deal with Chloe. Melanie has suffered so much for me. I won't let her down." I stood outside the door, clutching a handful of shopping bags, my knuckles turning white. I looked down. In my right hand was a bottle of premium, expensive organic eye vitamins I had bought for Melanie. In my left hand were local treats for her parents, and a limited edition designer watch for Ethan that had taken me weeks to get. Now every single gift felt like a burning joke in my hands. Inside, Mrs. Miller's voice started up again. "Melanie has always loved you, Ethan. She only broke up with Tyler because of you. You really can't let her down now. Now that you're finally together, you have to see this through." My heart went completely cold. Taking a deep breath, I pressed the doorbell. The hushed chatter inside stopped instantly. A few seconds later, the door swung open. Mrs. Miller froze when she saw me. A stiff, incredibly forced smile stretched across her face. "Chloe, you're back. Perfect timing. My husband and I actually have to get going. Something came up at home." She couldn't even look me in the eye. She grabbed her purse and practically ran past me out the door. Mr. Miller followed right behind her. Their hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway, as if staying a second longer would blow their cover. I walked in, putting my things down on the console, pretending everything was normal. On the living room couch, Melanie was curled up in Ethan's lap, just like she always was. She was holding a slice of orange, about to feed it to him. But when she heard me close the door, her hand shook, and the orange dropped to the floor. She shrank back into Ethan's chest, acting terrified. "Tyler, who just came in." Ethan immediately wrapped his arms around her. He looked up at me, his brow furrowing deeply. "You could have warned us you were coming back early. Walking in without a sound like that. Did you want to scare Melanie to death?" Melanie fumbled around to grab his arm, her fingers trembling in a display of sheer panic. "The project wrapped up early, so I took an earlier flight," I said quietly. I put the gifts on the coffee table and looked at Ethan. He was wearing the cozy lounge set I had bought him. On the collar of his shirt, there was a faint smear of baby pink lipstick. My gaze darkened. "Well, thank you for bringing these back," Ethan said, his tone incredibly detached. "Eye vitamins. I heard these are great for recovery and pretty expensive. I'll thank you on Melanie's behalf." Hearing my voice, Melanie seemed to calm down. She reached out to grab the vitamin bottle on the coffee table. Her hand perfectly bypassed the glass of water sitting right next to it, gripping the bottle on her very first try. "Is this for me?" "Thank you, Chloe. You're always so sweet to me," she said, offering me a pure, innocent smile. Ethan frowned at me. "You just got off a flight. Go rest in the guest room. I've got things covered with Melanie here." This was the townhouse Ethan and I had spent 6 months picking out for our future. Yet, the way he spoke made me feel like an unwelcome stranger. I didn't say another word. I turned around and walked into the guest room. Later that night, I got up to get a glass of water. As I walked past Melanie's room, I noticed the door wasn't fully closed. Every single word they whispered drifted out into the hallway and stabbed straight into my ears. "Ethan, I feel so awful," Melanie whimpered. "Chloe and I have been best friends for 10 years, but I fell for her boyfriend. I'm literally pretending to be blind just to stay in your house and steal you away from her. Am I a horrible person?" Ethan's voice was softer than I had ever heard it. "Don't talk like that, baby. Love has no rules. True love isn't a crime. If anyone's to blame, it's me. I'm the one who fell for you first. It has nothing to do with you. But Chloe is my best friend." Forget about her. Ethan interrupted gently, shushing her. Hey, if you're still feeling down, I won't go back to my room tonight. I'll stay here and hold you. Melanie hesitated for a second. But is that really okay? What if Chloe finds out? She'll be so hurt. I don't want to make her sad. Who cares? Ethan chuckled, his tone completely nonchalant. As far as the world is concerned, I'm your boyfriend. Sleeping in my girlfriend's bed is completely natural. Don't worry about Chloe. I have her handled. Next came the sound of rustling sheets, followed by soft, breathless gasps and the unmistakable sound of wet, passionate kisses. I stood in the dark hallway, my hand gripping my glass tighter and tighter. The ice-cold glass sent a shiver straight to my heart. I was trembling all over. Slowly, silently, I walked back to the guest room. The water in my glass stayed cold all night. Just like me. At breakfast the next morning, Ethan sat right next to Melanie, carefully peeling a boiled egg for her. Back then, he always complained that peeling eggs was too tedious. I was always the one who peeled them and put them on his plate. As it turned out, it wasn't that he found it tedious. It was just that I wasn't the right girl. Here, open up, he murmured, bringing the egg to Melanie's lips. She happily took a bite. When a few crumbs got on her chin, he reached out and gently wiped them away with his thumb. Only after doing all this did he finally look up at me. His tone was as flat as if he were speaking to a random roommate. Melanie wants some fresh orange juice. Go make some. It's dangerous for her to use the juicer since she can't see. My grip on my fork tightened. I didn't say a word. I got up and went into the kitchen. When I brought the juice back out, Melanie was fumbling around the table, trying to find her glass. Just as I placed the orange juice right next to her hand, her wrist suddenly jerked. The glass tipped over. The cold, sticky orange juice splashed everywhere, mostly landing right on my chest. The freezing liquid soaked through my shirt, making me shiver from the sudden chill. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. Melanie gasped, jumping up and waving her hands around frantically, almost knocking over the hot soup. I can't see. I couldn't find the glass. Chloe, are you okay? It's all my fault. I'm so clumsy. Ethan immediately stood up, catching Melanie by the waist to make sure she didn't trip. Once he was sure she was fine, he glared at me, his forehead creasing in anger. What is wrong with you? Can't you even set a glass down properly? You know Melanie is blind. Why didn't you just hand it directly to her? She's the one who knocked it over, I said quietly, a dull ache blooming in my chest. Ethan let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Are you serious? If you had actually handed it to her, she wouldn't have had to grope around and knock it over. Just admit you messed up. Why do you have to be so stubborn? Forget it. Just go change. Stop standing there throwing a tantrum and ruining Melanie's day. Melanie pulled lightly on his sleeve, letting out a soft sob. Tyler, please don't yell at Chloe. It's my fault. I wish I hadn't gone blind. I'm just a burden to everyone. Ethan's face softened instantly. He patted her back gently. It's not your fault, baby. She's just being immature. Don't take it to heart. I stood there, watching them play the protective boyfriend and the helpless victim. I almost wanted to laugh out loud. I didn't argue. I turned on my heel and went to change my clothes. When I came back out, I walked straight up to Ethan. I need to talk to you. We need to discuss things. Ethan blinked, taken aback. Before he could say anything, Melanie suddenly gasped, clutching her chest. Tyler, I can't breathe. My head is spinning so fast. In an instant, Ethan completely forgot I was even there. He swept her up in his arms and strode toward her bedroom, not giving me a single glance as he brushed past. Why didn't you tell me you weren't feeling well? I'm taking you to bed. Did you forget your meds? You're always so stubborn. How am I supposed to leave you like this? My hand, which I had reached out to grab him, froze in midair. Slowly, I pulled it back. Over the next few days, this exact drama played out every single day. Every time I tried to get Ethan alone to end things, Melanie would conveniently have some sort of emergency. After trying and failing a dozen times, I finally gave up. The adult world isn't black and white, and not every question needs a dramatic confrontation to get an answer. That night, Ethan went out to pick up some late-night cravings for Melanie. I was sitting on the couch sipping water when a loud crash of shattering glass echoed from the bathroom. Melanie's terrified voice followed. Chloe, are you out there? I wanted to wash my glass, but I dropped it. I can't see, and I'm scared to step. Can you come help me, please? I paused, setting my water down. I walked over and pushed open the bathroom door. Shattered glass was scattered all over the tiled floor. Melanie was standing barefoot right in the middle of the mess, swaying slightly as if she were about to lose her balance. I sighed and reached out to hold her arm. Careful. Don't move. The moment my hand touched her skin, she suddenly grabbed my wrist with terrifying force and slammed it downward. Right below my hand was a large, razor-sharp shard of glass. She let out a piercing shriek of pain, losing her balance and falling backward onto the floor. Blood immediately began to pool around her wrist. Almost instantly, the bathroom door was kicked open. Ethan stood there, holding a bag of takeout. When he saw the blood, his eyes went wide, and he dropped the bag, rushing forward. Melanie! He scooped her up from the floor. When he looked up at me, the rage in his eyes was enough to burn me alive. Chloe, are you out of your freaking mind? Melanie clung to him, shaking with pain, but her voice was still dripping with fake sweetness. Tyler, don't blame Chloe. It was my fault. I broke the glass, and when I called Chloe for help, I just couldn't find my footing. It has nothing to do with her. Look at your wrist. And you're still defending her. Ethan's heart was clearly breaking for her. His glare grew even colder. If she actually came to help you, how did you get cut this badly? Chloe, did you think you could just abuse her because she can't see? I didn't push her, I said, looking at him. My voice was so calm it surprised even me. She grabbed my hand and slammed it onto the glass. Ethan laughed, a mocking, disgusted sound. Do you really think I'm that stupid? She's blind. How could she perfectly target your hand and slam it onto the glass? You're just jealous of her. You've been looking for a way to hurt her. I never realized you were this sick and malicious. The moment those words left his mouth, a flicker of guilt flashed in his eyes. But before he could soften, Melanie began to sob hysterically. It's all my fault. I should have just died in that crash. Then I wouldn't have made Chloe so mad. Tyler, let me go. I'll go back to my parents' house. I don't want to be in your way anymore. Ethan held her tighter. Any lingering guilt he had vanished instantly. Don't say that. You're not going anywhere. He looked up at me, his voice absolute. Chloe, get out. Pack your bags right now and get the hell out of my house. I won't have a monster like you under my roof. I looked at him for a long, silent moment. I remembered him in high school, blushing as he slipped a love letter into my locker. I remembered him at college graduation, promising to build a home for us. I remembered him 6 months ago, holding my hand and asking me to wait for him. 5 years of memories flashed before my eyes, only to dissolve into the pure disgust on his face right now. Suddenly, I smiled. Okay. No shouting. No crying. No begging. I turned around and walked to the guest room. Ethan clearly hadn't expected me to agree so easily. He froze, opening his mouth to say something, but Melanie let out another weak cry in his arms. Tyler, it hurt so bad. He immediately snapped his gaze back to her, carrying her off to her bedroom. As I rolled my suitcase out the front door, the master bedroom door remained tightly shut. Through the wood, I could hear Ethan's soft, soothing voice and Melanie's sweet, whiny giggles. 6 months of silent suffering and humiliation finally evaporated into nothing. I closed the door behind me, pulled out my phone, and sent a message to HR. The transfer to the London headquarters. I accept. I'll start the paperwork tomorrow. My company had offered me this transfer 3 times before. The first time, I turned it down to support Ethan's startup. The second time, I turned it down to plan our wedding. This time, I was going to live for myself. I stayed in a hotel for 2 nights while completing all the relocation paperwork. For 48 hours, Ethan didn't call me once. He probably thought I was just throwing a tantrum and would come crawling back once I calmed down. After all, during every fight we'd had over the last 5 years, I was always the one to apologize first. The day before my flight, I went back to the apartment complex to pick up some books I had left at the lobby mailroom. As I reached the entrance, I ran straight into Ethan. He was holding a box of pastries from my favorite bakery. When he saw me, he froze, looking a bit awkward. Where have you been? You haven't been home in days. Out. I replied coldly, trying to push past him. Look. About what happened, he mumbled, rubbing the back of his neck as he held out the box. I was harsh. This is for you, to make it up to you. Don't hold a grudge against Melanie. She's sick. Once she's fully recovered, we'll start planning the wedding again. Mid-sentence, his phone started ringing. The moment he picked up, his voice turned incredibly soft. What's wrong, Melanie? Okay, don't cry. I'm coming right up. He hung up and gave me a rushed look. Melanie is scared to be alone. I have to run up. Take the cupcakes. We'll talk when I'm done. With that, he turned and ran toward the elevator. His steps hurried. I watched his retreating back, walked over to the nearest trash can, and dropped the box of cupcakes right into it. The next day, I boarded my flight. Watching the city shrink beneath the clouds, I whispered, goodbye, the last 5 years of my life. And goodbye to the Ethan I used to love. Meanwhile, back at the apartment, Ethan spent the entire day watching movies with Melanie. But when the night grew quiet, he couldn't stop thinking about Chloe. A strange, suffocating feeling tightened in his chest. He admitted he had been too harsh that night. She was a girl, staying out on her own for days. He wondered where she was. He pulled out his phone and dialed Chloe's number, wanting to ask her when she was coming home. The number you have dialed is currently switched off. He frowned, assuming she was still just playing hard to get. The next morning, he got up early. He bought her favorite breakfast sandwich and drove over to the jewelry store to pick up the custom diamond engagement ring he had ordered months ago. He drove straight to my office, intending to surprise me. The receptionist smiled as he walked up. "Hi there, how can I help you?" "I'm looking for Chloe. She works in the design department." The receptionist blinked, checking her database. "I'm sorry, sir. Chloe is no longer with the company. She accepted a long-term transfer to our London office. Her flight was yesterday afternoon." The receptionist's words hung in the air like a sentence handed down by a judge. "London yesterday afternoon?" Ethan repeated, his voice barely a breath. The engagement ring box in his jacket pocket suddenly felt heavier than lead, pressing sharply against his ribs. "Yes, sir," the receptionist replied, looking at him with mild curiosity. "The transfer was finalized weeks ago. Is there anything else?" Ethan didn't answer. He turned around and stumbled out of the glass doors of the office building. The bright morning sun felt blindingly harsh. He pulled out his phone again. He dialed her number. "The number you have dialed is currently switched off." He opened his messaging app. He typed a frantic string of texts. "Chloe, where are you? What do you mean you went to London? Pick up the phone. Stop playing around." Next to every single message, a little red exclamation mark popped up. She hadn't just switched off her phone. She had blocked his number, deleted her messaging accounts, and severed every digital thread connecting them. Panicking, Ethan drove across town to the apartment building where Chloe's older sister lived. He pounded on the door until his knuckles were raw. When the door finally opened, Chloe's sister, Clara, stood in the doorway, holding a cup of coffee. Her expression was ice cold. "Where is she?" Ethan demanded, breathing heavily. "Clara, tell me where Chloe went. What is this nonsense about London?" Clara took a slow sip of her coffee, looking him up and down with absolute contempt. "She told you, Ethan. You just weren't listening. You were too busy wiping soup off your little blind girlfriend's chin." "Clara, please." Ethan choked out, stepping forward. "It was all a misunderstanding. I ordered a ring. Look." He reached into his pocket and whipped out the blue velvet box, popping it open to reveal the glittering diamond. "I was going to propose to her today. I love her." Clara looked at the ring, then let out a sharp, mocking laugh that echoed down the hallway. "A ring?" Clara sneered. "Ethan, she gave you 5 years. She cooked your meals, paid half your mortgage, held your hand through your failed startup, and waited for you to see her. And you traded her for a girl who pretended she couldn't see a glass of orange juice." "She didn't leave because of a fight, Ethan," Clara added, her tone dropping into a chilling, quiet finality. "She left because she finally realized you were worthless. Don't ever come here again." Bang! The heavy wooden door slammed shut in his face. Ethan stood alone in the quiet hallway. His hand holding the open ring box trembled so violently that the small diamond caught the light, sparkling mockingly in the dim corridor. Ethan drove back to the townhouse in a haze of denial. "She'll come back," he told himself frantically. "Her clothes are still here. Her books are still here. She's just trying to scare me. She wouldn't just abandon 5 years over a few small disagreements." He unlocked the front door and rushed inside, heading straight for the guest room where Chloe had been staying for the past week. He threw the door open. The room was spotless. The bed was neatly made, stripped of her personal blankets. The closet doors swung open to reveal empty hangers. The nightstand, which usually held her reading glasses, her favorite lavender hand cream, and her framed photos, was completely bare. On the desk in the center of the room sat a white envelope. Ethan sprinted over and snatched it up. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper from a law firm, along with a brass key. It was a legal notice of partition. Because Chloe was a co-signer on the townhouse, she had legally assigned her 50% equity share to a real estate liquidator. Ethan had 30 days to either buy out her half of the property in cash, a sum totaling over $200,000, or the bank would force an auction on the house. Tucked behind the legal document was a small, handwritten note from Chloe. It contained only 8 words. "We are even. Do not look for me." Ethan's knees gave out. He sank onto the edge of the bare mattress, clutching the paper, his chest heaving as a wave of suffocating regret washed over him. Every fight they had ever had flashed through his mind. He remembered her walking home through the pouring rain with a heavy umbrella, just so he wouldn't get wet. He remembered her staying up until 3 a.m. editing his business proposals. He remembered her quiet, patient smile whenever he told her he was too busy to go out on dates. She had given him everything, and he had treated her like a servant in the very house she helped pay for. "Tyler." A soft, hesitant voice sounded from the doorway. Ethan lifted his head. Melanie was standing at the entrance of the guest room. She was wearing one of Chloe's old silk robes, her hands feeling around the doorframe in her usual helpless manner. "Tyler, why did I hear a door slam?" Melanie whimpered, her voice dripping with frail dependency. I was so scared. I couldn't find my slippers. Can you come carry me back to bed? In the past, the moment she used that soft, trembling voice, Ethan would have rushed over, scooped her up, and showered her with gentle reassurances. But today, looking at her standing there, a strange, sickening knot tied itself in Ethan's stomach. He looked at her hands gripping the doorframe, her posture, her face. For 6 months, he had treated this woman like a fragile glass doll. He had yelled at Chloe, kicked her out, and let her walk away into the night, all for the sake of protecting Melanie's delicate health. Melanie, Ethan said, his voice flat, hollow, and devoid of any emotion. Yes, Tyler? She purred, taking a small, trembling step forward. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulled out the microSD card he had recovered from his dashboard camera 2 days ago, the one he had meant to check after the incident in the bathroom, and held up his phone. Why didn't you tell me you went to the eye clinic 3 weeks ago? Melanie's body went rigid. The delicate, timid tilt of her head froze instantly. What are you talking about, Tyler? She stammered, her voice losing a bit of its sweet composure. I didn't go anywhere. I can't see. Ethan stood up from the bed, stepping toward her. His eyes were red, burning with a cold, terrifying intensity. He tapped his phone screen, turning it toward her. This is the parking garage footage from the medical center on the 14th, Ethan said, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. Your mother drove you there. You walked out of the ophthalmology department without your dark glasses. You walked straight past a display rack, picked up a magazine, flipped through it, and laughed with your mom. Melanie gasped, taking a sharp step back. This time, she didn't fumble or grope at the walls. She stepped smoothly, effortlessly dodging the laundry basket sitting on the floor behind her. Ethan caught the movement. A bitter, venomous laugh escaped his throat. Look at you, Ethan sneered, taking another step closer. You didn't even bump into the basket. Your eyes are completely fine, aren't they? Tyler, listen to me. Melanie's voice panicked. She reached out, trying to grab his arm, but Ethan violently shoved her hand away. How long? Ethan roared, his voice echoing through the empty townhouse. How long have you been able to see? Melanie stumbled back against the hallway wall. Seeing that the game was entirely up, the fragile, timid expression on her face slowly dissolved. She straightened her back. The helpless, tearful look in her eyes vanished, replaced by a dark, arrogant sharpness that Ethan had never seen before. 3 months, Melanie said, her tone suddenly completely normal, cold, and casual. Ethan felt as if he had been struck by lightning. 3 months. You've been cured for 3 months. Why wouldn't I be? Melanie scoffed, pulling Chloe's silk robe tightly around herself and crossing her arms. The doctor said it was just temporary nerve inflammation from the crash. My sight came back fully 12 weeks ago. Then why did you pretend? Ethan shouted, tears of pure fury spilling over his lashes. You made me peel your eggs. You made me carry you around. You let Chloe act like a live-in maid. You made me kick her out of her own home. Because if I told you the truth, you would have gone back to her. Melanie snapped, her voice rising into a shrill, hysterical pitch. You loved her. You were going to marry her. The only reason you stayed by my side was because you thought I was a pathetic, blind cripple who couldn't survive without you. She stepped right up to Ethan, glaring into his eyes with terrifying obsession. Tyler died in that crash because of me, Ethan. He begged me not to leave him, and I let him drive off a cliff. I sacrificed a man's life just so I could be free to take you from Chloe. Do you think I was going to let her have you back just because my eyes got better? Ethan stared at her, his stomach churning with pure horror. The sweet, innocent girl he thought he was protecting didn't exist. Standing before him was a sociopath, a liar who had manipulated her dead boyfriend, her own parents, and him, destroying the only woman who had ever truly loved him. You're a monster, Ethan whispered, horror lacing every syllable. I'm a monster? Melanie laughed hysterically. You're the one who kissed me in her bed, Ethan. You're the one who poured her orange juice in the trash. You chose-me. You threw her away with your own hands. Get out. Ethan spat through gritted teeth, his hands shaking violently. Get the hell out of my house. Your house? Melanie sneered, pointing at the legal partition notice sitting on the desk. This house belongs to Chloe and the bank. You don't even have $200,000 to buy her out. You're broke, Ethan. Your company is failing, and the only person who ever held you up is currently on a plane to Europe. She took off Chloe's silk robe, tossed it onto the floor, and stepped over it with a cold, mocking smirk. Don't worry, Tyler. I won't stay a second longer. A ruined man like you isn't worth my time anyway. She turned on her high heels, walked out of the guest room, and slammed the front door shut behind her. 6 months later, London, United Kingdom. The rain in London fell in a quiet, steady drizzle, glittering under the street lamps outside the Royal Institute of British Architects. Tonight was the annual European Interior Architecture Awards. Inside the grand, gilded hall, soft classical music played while champagne glasses clinked. High society elites, top international designers, and corporate executives gathered near the main stage. At the center of the room stood Chloe. She wore a breathtaking, ice blue silk evening gown that draped elegantly over her frame. Her dark hair was styled in soft waves, and her skin glowed with health and confidence. Over the past 6 months in London, her talent had been fully unleashed. Unburdened by domestic drudgery and emotional manipulation, she had spearheaded a multi-million-dollar restoration project that won first place at tonight's gala. Beside her stood her senior director, a handsome British architect named Julian, who was holding 2 glasses of champagne. "A toast to our star director," Julian said with a warm, genuine smile, handing her a glass. "To the woman who single-handedly saved the Mayfair project." Chloe clinked her glass against his, her laugh bright and clear. "To hard work and fresh starts." Just as she took a sip, a sudden commotion broke out near the security entrance of the hall. "Sir, you cannot go in without an invitation." A security guard's voice sounded loudly. "I just need to see her. Please. I know she's in there." A desperate, raspy voice shouted back in heavily accented English. "Chloe, Chloe." Chloe paused. She turned her head slightly toward the entrance. Pushing past the velvet ropes was a man. It was Ethan. He looked pitiful. His clothes were worn and wrinkled, his face thin, hollowed, and covered in uneven stubble. He looked like a man who hadn't slept a full night in months. After Chloe left, his world had completely collapsed. Without Chloe's silent financial backing and management, his startup went bankrupt within 3 months. The townhouse was auctioned off by the bank at a loss, leaving him deeply in debt. He had sold his car, drained his remaining savings, and spent weeks tracking down her company's public event schedule just to buy an economy-class plane ticket to London. When his desperate eyes caught sight of Chloe standing under the crystal chandeliers, radiant, elegant, and glowing, his knees almost buckled. "Chloe," he whimpered, pushing past a guard and stumbling toward her. "Chloe, thank God. I found you." The surrounding guests moved back, whispering in confusion at the disheveled stranger. Julian stepped slightly in front of Chloe, his brow furrowed. "Chloe, do you know this man? Should I call security?" Chloe looked at Ethan. Her eyes were completely calm. There was no rage, no heartbreak, no shock. Looking at him was no different than looking at a stranger who had accidentally spilled tea on the street. "It's fine, Julian," Chloe said softly. She stepped out from behind Julian and walked toward Ethan, stopping 3 feet away. Ethan looked at her, tears welling in his red, sunken eyes. He reached into his coat pocket with trembling fingers and pulled out a worn, slightly crushed blue velvet box. He dropped to his knees right there on the polished marble floor of the grand hall. "Chloe," Ethan sobbed, popping open the box to reveal the diamond ring. "I was wrong. I was such an idiot. Melanie lied to me about everything. Her eyes were fine. She manipulated me. She drove Tyler to his death and she used me." He reached out, trying to grab the hem of her ice blue gown, but Chloe casually took a half step back, keeping her dress completely clean. "I kicked her out the day you left, Chloe." Ethan wept, his voice cracking hysterically in front of the crowd of international elites. "I sold everything. I came to London just for you. Look at the ring, Chloe. I bought it 6 months ago. I wanted to marry you. Please, come home with me. We can start over." The surrounding guests gasped, looking at the scene in shock. Chloe looked down at the man kneeling at her feet. She looked at the diamond ring. The ring she had waited 5 years for, the ring she had once believed would complete her life. Now looking at it, she felt nothing but a mild, distant pity for her past self. "Ethan," Chloe spoke, her voice smooth, calm, and carrying effortlessly through the quiet hall. Ethan looked up, a spark of desperate hope lighting up his eyes. "Yes, Chloe? Yes. Do you remember the night I came back from my business trip?" Chloe asked softly. Ethan's face went pale. I remember. You told Melanie that I was immature." Chloe continued, her expression unreadable. "You told her that you had me handled. You told her that sleeping in her bed was natural because you were her boyfriend." Ethan choked on his tears, shaking his head wildly. "I was just trying to comfort her. I didn't mean it. I swear I didn't mean it." "It doesn't matter whether you meant it or not, Ethan," Chloe said, offering him a faint, polite smile. "The moment you chose to play the hero for another woman in the house I paid for, you erased 5 years of my life." She took a slow, deep breath, enjoying the fresh, cool air of the hall. "You didn't come to London because you love me, Ethan," Chloe said, looking directly into his hollow eyes. "You came because Melanie abandoned you. Your Company failed, and your house was taken. You came because you realized that. Without me you are nothing. No. No. That's not true. I love you. Ethan shrieked, reaching out frantically. Security, Chloe called out smoothly, turning her back on him. Please remove this gentleman. He is disturbing the guests. Yes, director. Two tall British security officers stepped forward, grabbing Ethan by his arms and pinning him back. Chloe. No. Please. Ethan screamed, thrashing wildly against the guards as he was dragged backward across the polished floor. I love you. Don't do this to me. Chloe. Chloe didn't turn back. She accepted a fresh glass of champagne from Julian, took a light sip and smiled as the heavy glass doors of the hall closed behind Ethan's fading, hysterical cries. 1 year later, in a small, rainy coastal town in the north, Melanie sat in a cramped, dark apartment. After Ethan discovered her lie, word of her manipulation spread through their old social circle. Her reputation was entirely destroyed. Her parents lost their small local business after clients boycotted them for their role in the scam. Melanie now worked as a low-level phone operator at a local call center, living in constant obscurity, her youth and beauty fading under the weight of her own bitterness. Ethan was living in a small rented room in the outskirts of the city, working double shifts at a local warehouse to pay off his remaining bank debts. Every night, he sat by his narrow window, drinking cheap beer, looking at a faded photograph of Chloe he had saved on his old phone, a photograph of a girl who used to smile at him with absolute, unconditional love. A love he had thrown into the trash, never to be recovered again. Meanwhile, in London, the morning sun broke through the clouds over the Thames, casting golden light across the floor-to-ceiling windows of a penthouse studio. Chloe stood on her balcony, holding a warm cup of coffee, looking out over the breathtaking skyline of the city. Beside her, Julian walked out, wrapping a warm wool coat over her shoulders. Ready for the morning exhibition, director? Chloe turned to him, her eyes bright, clear, and full of life. Always, she smiled. She took a deep breath of the fresh morning air, took his hand and walked forward into her bright, boundless future.